And we're live.
We are live. In a roundabout way. Hey, look, it's Paul Marshall.
Hey, look, man. The myth, the legend.
Right? Yeah. Welcome to the Chris and Mike Show. He's Mike, I'm Chris, and a portion of the show is brought to you by Riverside FM, the one and only choice for your podcasting platforms. Remember, we are live on Twitch, YouTube, and streaming now on chrisandmikeshow.com. So if you want to listen to the legendary Neanderpaul Marshall, who joins us today, you can go to one of those platforms. You can check the show out live, and then obviously we'll drop it in a couple weeks when all the editing is done. But you get the real, raw, and organic version right here and now. So without further ado, Mr. Paul Marshall is on the show, and we are super excited. Paul and I go way back. He did my spots for me when I was advertising on KDKB, KSLX. Super cool human. Amazing rock and roll life resume, as I like to call it. So welcome to the show, Paul. How are you today?
Unemployed.
I'm sorry.
And for the first time in almost 16 years. So wow. It's a weird place to be. But I'm between radio jobs right now, so I have time to take time out, and I appreciate you guys giving me a little bit of a vine to come hang out on a Friday morning or Friday.
Well, it's very nice to meet you, man, and we appreciate you coming on for sure.
Absolutely.
So I'm looking for another job.
Okay, so everybody, this is Paul Marshall. Give him a job. So if I remember correctly, the 16 years ago would have been from KDKB to KSLX.
Yeah, I got what this time around is something they call it a RIF, which is reduction in force.
I'm familiar.
I didn't get fired because I did anything wrong, and I didn't really get fired. Right. I got laid off. Yeah. But and I'm eligible for rehire, but the idea that they're going to rehire me at the same radio station seems a little bit far-fetched. But
let me ask you this, Paul.
KDKB got bought by a different company, and they decided to change the format. That's usually how I lose the job. I usually lose a job if the radio station changes format, if there's a new program director. Program director is kind of like having a head coach. They want their own quarterbacks.
Right.
So that's usually how I lose a job. This time around, it was budgetary. My number was on a piece of paper, and they went, we need to eliminate that number. And lo and behold, here I am.
There you are.
So it was 16 years ago. It was KDKB when they switched their format. But thankfully, the company treated me well. That company treated me very well. And 3 weeks later, I was on KSLX, and then we did, a 10-year run of mornings with Mark, and then a year in middays. And then the grass seemed like it was a little bit greener. I got presented an offer and an opportunity that was, I guess in hindsight, too good to be true. And so I decided to go back to a radio station that I used to work at 20 years ago to help, quote unquote, resurrect the brand. But it turns out that didn't work out 18 months later. And stuff happens.
Yeah, it does. Stuff does happen. Mike, you had a question?
Now, do you just attribute that to, first off, do you guys have some sort of union? Because I'm familiar with the reduction in force language to where you're eligible for rehire. How does that work in your business?
The company that I worked for just now that just riffed me, I've worked for them 4 or 5 times before. So it's like, it's almost like pro sports where you can go back to the same station multiple different times. It's never personal, unless you do something wrong, unless you do something like break broadcast rules, you swear, or you do something, unforgivable.
Right.
But there is a union. There's a union called SAG-AFTRA, which is the Screen Actors Guild and the American Federation of Radio and Television Announcers. And that union is, most radio stations are non-union because that union is sort of limited. If you're a union member, you can only work for union stations. It's a very limiting environment. And the only time I've ever been a member of union was when I worked for a radio station in Boston, but that wasn't SAG-AFTRA. It was actually Teamsters. They were IBEW. So I was technically a Teamster for a couple of years, which was kind of interesting. I don't get the pension
right on
because I wasn't vested.
But,
right. I was an IBEW, Brotherhood of Electrical Workers.
I'm a UAW member, so that's why awesome. I'm familiar with that being rehired. What do you attribute the downsizing to? I mean, I think we all know the answer. I just want to hear your version of how radio is kind of.
Look, there's an argument to be made that selling radio is not like any other product. It's not like beer. It's not like sneakers. It's not like cars. It's not a tangible thing. And so in order to sell it, you have to have a particular set of skills, if you will, where somebody can sell an emotion, a connection. And that takes a special talent. And those that don't possess that talent usually end up failing in that. So there's a phrase that says, when sales fails, the product suffers. So they're having a hard time selling radio to people because for whatever reason, the industry doesn't do the greatest job of promoting itself as the original social network. Like what you're doing right now, this podcast is an attempted radio broadcast.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's what you guys are doing. Correct. It's you don't have a job in radio. You're not on a radio station with a 100,000 watt transmitter. So you have figured out a way to put together a show, put it on the internet where there are 9 million podcasts. The problem is 8,999,999 suck. There's only a handful of podcasts that are worth going, that worth listening to.
Right.
But they're all trying to be radio shows. And the radio industry, for whatever reason, is talking about how great podcasting is and how great the content is, yet they don't know how to sell it. They don't know how to, so it's really a sales issue more than anything else.
Interesting.
So monetizing the content, I think is
so there's a disconnect there, right? Is that what you're saying?
I think so, but again, I don't work in sales, so I don't know.
I'm just asking your opinion because you've been in the business 40 years. You definitely have an inside view of, and I want to ask you this question too: is what was radio like when that was the only medium and you guys had all the power, right? You guys were the stars back in the day.
It's still, this is a great example of the radio industry failing to acknowledge what it is. Over 90% of Americans still listen to the radio.
Yeah.
Every week. Yeah. Any business, any organization, any corporation, any product that has 90% saturation in America would be thrilled, should be able to print money.
I agree with that, but there was a time when that was the only option too, right?
Well, that was back in the 20s. I mean, once radio has been dying since television, and then cable television, and then the VCR, and then the internet, and then like whatever other, and then the Xbox, and then Spotify, and for all these things, radio has been dying, and yet still, after all of those proclaimed deaths, it's still here, 100 years later.
Man.
It's still here, but it just does a terrible job of pounding its chest and talking about how it is the first social network. When somebody dies, when Ozzy died, first thing you did was go to the radio station. I don't care if the internet is the place that you wanted to go. You went to the radio station to hear the news immediately because it's the most immediate social network. It's the most immediate interpersonal social network. You can read stuff on a screen on the internet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Actually, I went to your page because you're really good at announcing when people die.
Because that's my job.
Sure. Right.
But, that's my job to be connected, to be the conduit through which people get their information from the music industry to you.
Mm-hmm. So you had said something earlier off Mike's question, and I think you're brilliant at this. I don't know if I'm gonna state it right again, but you talked about how you're connecting and you're building the stories with the listeners, things like that. Like I gravitated towards your show on KDKB because number one, it was afternoons, and being in real estate, KDKB was always in my office. So all the little things you would do, like the Zero Record stuff, and you're welcome. But that connected, that resonated. So, I had all the stations that I could advertise on. I started with KUPD overnights when Pratt was still there. But then I gravitated towards KDKB because I really liked your afternoon drive stuff and how you were, or not afternoon drives, your middays. But I enjoyed that to the extent that some of the things that you did on the show, then I would take Jake. I told you that before. Jake and I would go to see your records and look for records and shit, just based on the fact that that was something you shared and did, and your love for vinyl and the album covers. And Mike and I have talked about before. There's, they don't make music like they used to as far as the covers and the albums and the artwork and things like that. But that was something that connected with me, and I'm sure it also connected with thousands and thousands of our listeners in Arizona, because that's you. You weren't a dick.
You're reinforcing my point.
Right. Yeah.
Here's why.
You were always approachable.
I didn't mean to diss
cool.
radio on any level, but I must be unique in that, Paul, I couldn't tell you the last time I turned on a radio station. And the way I know you is because when I moved back to Illinois, it was 2010 when I got my current job. And for me, I remembered KSLX, KDKB. So I would turn you on in the afternoon because I was working a 12-hour shift. And that was my only option back then, because Spotify wasn't around. There wasn't a music platform for me to go to for music. Radio was still it. That's my point. And there's a lot of people in my boat who, like Chris said, would go to you in the 90s or somebody who was there at the time to find out what is the latest music. Who do I go listen to? Why do you like it? And that meant something to me, that you liked it.
Right.
Back then, you guys were the stars. That was my point.
Credibility. Absolutely.
I'm not saying it's not still there. My mother listens to the radio every day. There's, like you said, there's 90% of Americans still do. I'm in that 10%. So I've been away from it for so long. There was no disrespect there meant at all, man.
Oh, not at all. I think what you're pointing out is what is a public misperception. And then I would ask you the question, why don't you listen anymore?
Because I can't stand commercials.
You'll listen through the commercials though if you like what you're listening to, because like when you're watching the Super Bowl,
I would.
If you
found a new radio station, I would turn you on to find out what you're listening to. Absolutely. Yeah.
If you like the product, you'll listen through something. And even with a radio station, like there's no such thing as a perfect radio station. If you're, there's a programming philosophy that every quarter hour, every 15 minutes should be a representation of all the textures and styles of music that your radio station plays. But everybody knows not everybody loves every song that your radio station's playing. They're not going to do it. What they do is they trust that if they hear 5 songs and that third song is a song they don't necessarily like, well, they just heard 2 songs they like, and they know they're going to like the next song, so they're willing to listen through. And that happens with every listener.
That's
so every song loses a certain percentage of listeners, but if you build brand loyalty, look, not everybody likes every play in football, but you like the team. Not everybody likes the fact that if it's 3rd and long, sometimes a team will just do a draw up the middle. Now that draw is only going to go for 4 or 5 yards. It's going to get stuffed, and you're going to punt. But what if it doesn't? What if it doesn't? And that's what happens when new music comes on the radio. I just played you Black Sabbath. I just played you U2. And now I've got a new song from so-and-so. Chances are it's not going to be around in 6 months. But what if it does? What if it becomes the next big thing? And you trust me to tell you about that. And I put my stamp of approval on it. And then if I'm lucky enough to run into Steven Tyler from Aerosmith and he talks to me like a peer, and now I become basically again, I mentioned it before, the conduit through which they get their message to you. I get credibility. You get a great song or a great experience or a great story, and Steven Tyler gets exposure for his new music. Everybody wins. It's really a communal thing. You can get music anywhere. You can get music anywhere you want. That song is going to be the song is going to be the song. You can't get what comes between the music and that connection anywhere else. And those that are really good, at making that connection are the ones that are going to be around.
Which is why it's surprised you got riffed. But that's surprising why you got riffed, because you do that, man. You're not just like when I went to KDKB and you recorded my spot, I left that thinking he's a fucking cool guy. Like, he's approachable. He's not this arrogant narcissistic asshole. I'm wasting his time. You were truly appreciative of me choosing you. Because I hired you essentially to record my spot. That to me was cool. And had you not been who you were, I don't think I ever would have went back and continued to do it. Because other stations I was on, and I didn't get that vibe. But you were just so I'm Paul. Radio is just cool. And
radio is the please love me business. It's politics. without being political, it's politics. It's you're voting every day with whatever, if you hit the preset, you're voting every day to choose to listen to my show. And so it's incumbent upon me. Nobody wants to turn on the radio and be bummed out. Nobody wants to,
True.
Yeah. I mean,
True.
so I stay away from politics because it doesn't work.
Good job.
I try to make, I try to do everything universally. If it's funny, it's funny. If it's meaningful from a musical standpoint, then it's meaningful from a musical standpoint. And I'm fortunate enough that for whatever reason, I have been able to tap into the music fan. Because I am a fan. If you look behind me, you can only see a little part of it.
Oh, I see it.
That's part of a 6,000 CD library of music. It's the most important thing in my life. In fact, I've talked to some friends about if I have to move, I'm like, oh boy, what am I going to do with all my CDs? I'm going to pack them up. I'm going to put them in boxes and I'm going to move them and take them with me. Even though I have it all digitized, I have it all on a hard drive. My music still matters. And it matters to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Well, and that came through in your show for sure.
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
That came through in your show. You know, that's one of the reasons that I listened was it was very obvious very quickly that you were as big a fan of music as anybody. And that's why you pursued life, you know, as a DJ and hopefully doing the kind of music that you like. That seemed to be a passion for people back then. And to Chris's point, you guys were the rock stars. You know, when you met a DJ for sure in the 80s and 90s, it was like meeting somebody unattainable as much as the musician themselves. It's like, hey, that's the guy that told me to go listen to Aerosmith.
Yeah, you were the gatekeeper. Like when the bands would come to the studio, like, you know, you got to sit down with these bands and interview them and talk to them and be this. That was cool, you know?
Yeah, I think it's important to measure that, though. It's important to measure that and realize that you're not, you know, those that can do, those that can't do radio. You know, those guys are musicians and they're outstanding at what they do, but let's not put yourself, and you know, there are some personalities, radio personalities who try to elevate themselves above the audience and like they're some sort of messiah standing on the mountain on top trying to reach down to the choir, to the people. And I've never found that to be effective. I think the only difference between you and me is I have this microphone and there are speakers, and that's really I found that that's just the best way to go, because but for a budgetary decision, there's no difference between you and me.
Right. Sure. Right. Oh yeah, understood. Let's talk about your long list of rock and roll icons you've met over the years. What was your, and I know you're going to talk Lemmy because you loved Lemmy. You did. What was your favorite?
Me too.
Like, what was your favorite? Like, if you had to categorize just one interview, one connection you made with just a musician, that you can rock star, not a rock star. Everybody's definition that's different. But what was the one conversation you had with somebody in that industry that you just sat back and like, wow, like I just talked to that person. Like I just had a conversation with him.
I would say, and I've had an opportunity to talk to just about anybody that I'd want to. I haven't met a Beatle yet.
Okay.
And I haven't met a member of the Rolling Stones yet. And I haven't met a member of the Who yet. But those are the three that I haven't met. But I spoke to Jimmy Page. And that was humbling. And I was stupid enough to ask Jimmy Page. I said, and it was just me being an idiot. I said, Jimmy, you know, we all know there's a lady who knows all that glitters is gold. With what word can she get what she came for? And he paused for a second and he says, I don't know, you'd have to ask Robert that. I don't mess with his lyrics and he doesn't mess with me guitars. And that was it. It was like it was a game show question. And then as I sat back after I said it, I said, did you just ask Jimmy Page a game show question? What's wrong with you? But I had to, because for those that heard that conversation, that was, oh my God, what did he just do? And it was a memorable part of it. And Jimmy wasn't offended by it. It was stupid. I've asked Ozzy Osbourne if he ever drops the towel when he gets out of the shower, and asked Sharon if his ass looks fat.
What Ozzy say to that?
You got a frying pan to the head. Yeah. So he was Hey, but like if you get into a conversation with these guys and treat them like human beings, they will treat you like human beings back. So I would say I was humbled by the opportunity to talk to Jimmy Page. But then I've had other times where I've spoken to big name rock stars and they're and they're just inviting and welcoming and it doesn't feel like I'm talking to a legend, which is kind of interesting to me. When they treat you like a peer instead of like when they know your stuff. I think that's the big issue is if you sit down with somebody and they know you don't know what you're talking about, the interview goes bad real quick.
I can see
absolutely.
So if they know what you're talking about, it loosens them up, it relaxes them. They know that you're not going to blindside them and ask them something stupid like, with what word can she get what she came for?
Yeah.
So without naming any names, what's the worst thing that ever happened in an interview?
Oh, that's a good question.
You can name names if you want. Most people don't want to, but I don't care about the name. What do you think is the worst thing that ever happened in your radio career, as far as maybe somebody just wasn't willing to do it, or what's your worst
questions
experience?
Are the worst when they just go yes.
Oh, see, that's why we don't interview, man, because the interviews can be so one-sided and they're dull, and you have that dead stop, and then it's
I think there are situations where you've got, look, if you don't want to be there, don't be there. There was a well-known sports interviewer that, and I won't mention their name, but they had a very famous football player on, and they got about 2 questions into the interview, and they recognized that the football player didn't want to be there, so they just cut the interview off.
Nice.
They're like, all right, well, it's good to talk to you. See you later. And that was it. They just kicked him out of the studio.
Yeah.
The weirdest moment that I had in a situation like that where things went wrong was actually during a live event in Memphis, Tennessee. There was a band called Cool for August. You know who they are?
I've heard the name,
but there's a reason why they're not still around.
Okay.
So Cool for August are on stage, and it's at a place called the New Daisy Theater on Beale Street in Memphis. And it's not going over well. They're a band that, the lineup of the band was like Seven Dust, Jimmy's Chicken Shack, Fu Manchu. Like these bands were all significantly heavier than Cool for August.
I remember all those names.
Right.
Yeah.
So the Cool for August guys are not doing well. And somebody yells in the middle, in between songs, "You suck." And of course the lead singer goes over to the microphone and goes, "You know what? I might suck, but I don't have to go back to a $5 an hour job tomorrow." Well, the crowd did not react well to that.
Ouch.
So I had to walk onto the stage and grab a microphone and calm the crowd down.
Wow.
And the crowd finally calmed down. I'm like, look, these guys are here. It's a charity event, blah, 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 blah. Christmas time. I was trying to do everything I could to try and make
bring it back around.
And the lead singer, as everything calms down, I turn and look at the lead singer and go ahead. So the guy goes up to the microphone and he goes, "F you, Memphis."
Oh, Jesus.
And so I grabbed the mic off the side of the stage again. I go, "No, man, F you. Go ahead, throw it." And everybody pelted the stage with whatever they had in their hands. And it went bad. In hindsight, I shouldn't have done that. But in the end, I had to do that.
Heat of the moment.
I had to take up for the audience, because the audience is what matters. When that band leaves and goes to the next town, those people that paid hard-earned money to see that band who just disrespected them like that, those people stay. And those are the people that listen every day. And I work for the audience.
Yep.
I work for the radio station, obviously, but my job is to be an advocate for the audience. And I'll be damned if I'm going to let some band badmouth the people that worked hard, that might have worked at a $5 an hour job or whatever it was, and spent that $5 an hour to go see your band. So that was probably the thing that went wrong the most, probably the worst thing that ever happened.
Okay, so here's a total ADHD moment. I have to give a shout out because we have a mutual friend on Facebook. He's been on our show, I think 2 or 3 times. Super cool human, amazing little life resume. Don Warnock says hello from Kansas City.
Don's in Kansas City.
Yeah. And he said, also tell him Chuck Armstrong said, hi, F him up, Chuck. And he said, you'll get it.
Yeah, Chuck is he's a high up in a company called Town Square Media now. He hosts a radio show called Loudwire Nights for a company called Town Square Media. Chuck built my website. He was a guy that worked part-time for us in Kansas City and is one of the nicest human beings on the face of the earth, a solid human being. He and his wife are good people. And that's good. So tell Don to tell Chuck I said hello.
You just did right there.
Yeah, Chuck's a good dude.
You just did right there. So website is your website Neanderpaul.com?
It is.
Cool.
It is. Yeah. Up there are decades worth of audio. I mean, things that I've done talk radio. I've done sports radio. I've worked for some of the best rock stations in America, some of which are not even there anymore. There it is,
boys and girls. Neanderpaul.com.
I was checking it out this morning.
And there's audio, there's video up there. There are plenty of things for people to check out if they would like to.
Cool.
You know, it's mostly audio clips from different radio stations that I work for.
Nice.
And most recently KSLX. I didn't put anything up. I don't have much up from the current radio station that I worked for because I didn't expect to get fired. So I didn't have a lot of audio with me.
Right.
I do have some audio, but it's not as interesting as the other things that you might find on the page. Gotcha. Yeah, the video has got. You'll have interviews with.
Cool.
With Metallica,
Sublime.
When we played with Randy Jackson from Zebra.
I remember that.
Yeah, a lot of video.
Zebra.
I remember that.
So yeah, cool, a lot of places, a lot of things for you to waste time on my webpage.
So you taught me Y&T was yesterday and today. Just a shout out for the knowledge because we had talked about Y&T and you're like, their name was originally yesterday and today. I'm like, no shit.
That one.
So you actually, another little fun story about Neanderpaul. You had played. This was my total fucking ignorance of Guns N' Roses' debut album. I didn't realize Rocket Queen was on that album because I never made it to it when it was the cassette era. So you played that. You played that one day on the show, and I called you and thinking, "Oh, I got Paul, man." I'm like, "Dude, Rocket Queen's not on Appetite. It's on Chinese for Democracy." And you fucking shredded me.
I would have too.
But it was a fun shred because we had something in common. But that was fun because I was like, holy shit, he's right. And then obviously you're right because but it was just me thinking I caught Paul on something. How was Stephen Piercy? Is Stephen Piercy a good guy?
Stephen's he's dry.
Okay, I can see that.
I wouldn't exactly say he is gregarious and outgoing, but he's certainly not off-putting either. He's just he's a pro. He was there to do business, to sell his book, and I found him to be interesting. But that was one of the problems with Rat. Is Rat was a great band, but they weren't very interesting.
Right.
They're not characters.
There was no danger there back then.
No.
Yeah, they wrote really good songs. They wrote really good songs, but there's nothing. There was no Tommy Lee in Rat. There's no David Lee Roth in Rat. They were not very.
No.
Let me ask you this, Paul.
You could grab a hold on.
Let me ask you this, because I see that you were a guitar player. I played guitar for 40 years. That's my forte for sure. What do you think about Warren DeMartini? He wrote arguably one of the hardest and best licks or riffs in the history with Lay It Down. But he never, I agree with you. He wasn't flashy enough to be an Eddie Van Halen or a Randy Rhoads, but he was technically good enough for sure.
I think the thing about Warren DeMartini, and this is something I was just talking to my buddy John in New York about, his tone, his guitar tone was that 88 MP1 guitar processor tuned to the maximum, tuned to only he and George Lynch had that tone.
That's a good comparison.
No, they had a very, very similar tone. They play very similarly. And they write very similar riffs. But I think that Warren, he's also an introvert. He's not a flashy, the extrovert in that band was Robin Crosby for all intents and purposes.
Absolutely.
And so Warren, I think, was a guitar nerd. I think he was nerd like Eddie Van Halen, who sat in his room in the corner and just played. I don't think he was ever comfortable being on stage and being Warren DeMartini. And we see it now. I mean, he's playing with Steven again. And he's almost like a reluctant guitar hero.
Agreed.
But wrote, I mean, look, Rat wrote better songs than a lot of their peers.
100%. I saw them live, and they kicked ass live, man.
Well, and a lot of that too, by the way, their producer, Beau Hill, gave them a tone. There were certain producers that, you know, Mutt Lange and who's the guy that was Spencer Proffer, who was Quiet Riot's producer. There were certain guys.
And they all have a sound.
They have a sound, a certain sound. Roy Thomas Baker, who produced Queen and The Cars and The Darkness. There was a certain sound, and Beau Hill got this unique sound out of Rat that was very compressed and very processed. And he liked to use Simmons drums, a lot of electric drums in their mix. Only two bands sounded like that, Rat and Kix. Yep. And if you look at them both, it was because they were both produced by a guy named Beau Hill.
I saw them live too, and they kicked ass too. I'll give both those bands credit. They could pull off those produced albums live. It really sounded good. I saw Rat on the City to City tour, so it would have been like 1988, and they were in their prime, man.
Yeah, they were, again, Rat. If you look down the list of greatest hits on their albums, their songs are every bit as good as bands that achieved more. That were
I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, Rat was never a headlining band that was huge.
Right.
They could fill hockey arenas, but they were never a stadium band. There were some bands that were lesser bands who shall remain nameless that ended up as stadium bands.
Right.
Sure.
Agreed.
Well, like Chris said, I agree with him. Kix never even attained the status of Rat. They opened up for Rat when I saw Rat. That's how I saw them both together. And I loved Kix they had that bluesy kind of AC/DC, but with a glam twist to it, you know?
They put funk. They had funk in their music.
Yeah, there you go.
Good word. Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
I
never thought about that angle.
The same kind of funk that Electric Boys and Extreme and a couple of other bands of that era, it was a swing. It was a funk swing. It had some stank on it.
Yeah.
And you got to have some stank on the music to make it work. Otherwise, it's just too homogenized, too bland.
Even AC/DC has a swing to it.
Well, AC/DC's the perfect band.
Yeah.
Because they write songs that riff for guys and groove for girls.
Yep.
You
Phil
can dance
Rudd knew how to
AC/DC.
swing that.
Even stuff like Riff Raff, you can dance to it.
Yeah.
Yes. Good point.
So they've found the balance between riff and groove. And that's what I love about them. I don't know many people that don't like AC/DC. Even they might not call themselves an AC/DC fan, but there's a reason why you hear Back in Black at every football game.
This is true.
Makes you want to move.
That's fantastic.
So yeah, I still love music.
What are some other bands that came out of that era? Because obviously, you know, we're all about the same age, I'm guessing. We all know Poison and Motley Crue and the bands that, like you said, some of them maybe arguably didn't deserve the success of other bands. What are some bands out of the 80s that people might have forgot that you loved?
Badlands.
Thank you.
Oh,
I'm so glad you said that, Paul. I bought my Gibson Gold Top from Greg Chasen at Bizarre Guitar.
Yeah, Greg's a good dude. Badlands should have been something.
God, that album, that first album is perfection.
Yeah. Blue Murder, Tora Tora, Spread Eagle. Helix was a pretty good band.
Oh, yeah.
Out of Canada. Hey.
I could look.
Black
and Blue was a pretty good band.
Black and Blue, yeah. Tora Tora was their hit. Their hit was put on my Walking Shoes or something. Was that right?
Walking Shoes.
Yeah, Walking Shoes and Phantom Rider were their two biggest hits.
Yeah.
I'm looking in my rack here, and I can tell you.
Yeah, look at your rack, man.
Nice rack, dude.
Fastway.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Fast Eddie Clark.
Yeah, Fastway, good band.
Yep.
I mean Tesla.
I love
Tesla.
Mechanical Resonance, by far one of my favorite albums of all time. Modern Day Cowboy. When I heard that
opening,
I'm like, this is yeah.
That opening to Modern Day Cowboy is so cool.
Yeah, Tesla's another one of those bands that because they didn't have
the look.
a character that sort of that was over the top. All they did was write good music, and that should have been enough.
They should have been,
and they still write good music. They're still out there playing.
They do,
and fantastic band.
Yeah.
But bands like look, people don't realize that Tesla's Mechanical Resonance came out like a couple of weeks before Appetite for Destruction, and if Appetite for Destruction hadn't become what it became, Mechanical Resonance might have been a much bigger album.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Because there was a there was this period of like 6 months where just phenomenal bands released phenomenal music. And there's only room for X amount. There's so much. That's why I have so much music, is because there's only room for X amount. You can only play 12 songs in an hour on the radio.
Oh, that's it? That's why you never played Estranged for me. That explains it right there.
Because it's too long.
I kept, Mike doesn't know. Every time we would talk, I'd call on the radio and just bullshit with him. I'd play Estranged. He's like, I can't play Estranged, man. It's too long.
It's too long. It's 9 minutes long, man. You can't.
Well, people play Sweet Home Alabama. That's a fucking long song.
Alabama's not 9 minutes long. You're thinking of Freebird. Freebird is 13 minutes
Freebird,
long.
yeah. Freebird. Yes. There you go. My bad, Freebird.
Yeah, but Freebird and Estranged are two different universes.
I know. It's,
Freebird is one of the greatest songs of all time. Estranged is just a good Guns N' Roses song.
Dude, it's a great Guns N' Roses song, man.
It's a good Guns N' Roses song.
Yeah. It's one of my favorites.
It's one of
my favorites.
That's the problem with radio.
With you. It's one of my favorite guitar solos for sure.
Yeah.
It's one of the problems with
radio.
With radio, and being on the radio, is you don't get a chance to play a lot of times your favorite music. Because if I was playing just my favorite music, it'd be an audience of one. Like for every one person that wants to hear Estranged, there are thousands that would rather hear Paradise City again.
Yeah. We had talked about that before.
That's the nature of the business.
Yeah, one of our conversations over the years, I asked you about the songs that are chosen and played, because there's so many other songs these artists have that could be bigger, better songs, but because of the box that the radio is kind of stuck in as far as what brings the listener in and keeps them coming back, are those Paradise City as opposed to Estranged.
Well, Paradise City is a better song than Estranged.
Right, but I was trying to think of an example between, you have a band that has 4 or 5 hits. You're gonna constantly, from a radio station, you told me you're playing the ones that keep people coming back because you have to.
Well, it's
like
brand,
when you guys used to do KSLX, you used to do the weekend stuff, which was really cool, A to Z, and you'd kind of deep dive into stuff. But I think that's where the conversation began at one of those weekends you guys were doing that, because I was like, why don't you play these songs from these artists? You play the same thing. It's A to Z, but you have all these other things. And that's kind of where you educated me on how you have to choose the music. Go ahead.
Most people don't want to be challenged. Yeah. Most people don't want to be educated. They don't want to be, and it sounds like I'm being condescending, and it's not it. They just don't want to be challenged. Given a choice between, I don't know, I'll just use a classic rock example, Hitch a Ride from Boston, which is my favorite song on that album. Given a choice between Hitch a Ride or More Than a Feeling, people will choose More Than a Feeling 10 times out of 10.
Right.
They just do.
Yeah.
Unless they're me, and then I'm listening to Hitch a Ride with you.
Yeah, but that's okay.
Exactly.
But that's an extreme minority.
Agreed. I know I'm in the minority. You're in the minority. Chris is in we know that. But how many? I guess I agree with what you're saying. There's not enough of us out there to justify that ever, right?
There's a reason why McDonald's is everywhere.
Sure.
Right.
It's not a great hamburger.
I was going to say watch any modern day sitcom, and that's all you have to know, because I can't stomach any of them.
It meets brand expectations. You know what you're going to get when you go to Starbucks. You know what you're going to get when you go to McDonald's. You don't go to McDonald's for pizza.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And so if I'm sitting on the radio at your local rock station and I have a choice of playing Back in Black, Paradise City, I don't know, Black Dog from Led Zeppelin, or Dreams in the Dark from Badlands, Dreams in the Dark is not going to make the cut. There are 3 or 4 other songs that are going to, you're trying to attract the biggest audience possible. And the biggest audience possible is attracted by the most mainstream mass appeal music. And people, look, I don't watch American Idol, but I'm in the extreme minority. There are
Me too.
tens of
We're
millions
with
of
you.
people.
We're with you.
But tens of millions of people do. So
Right.
I'm okay being in the extreme minority in that.
Yeah.
But it's a numbers game. Gene Simmons once said it: "He who sells the most wins." It's a business, and you want to attract the biggest possible audience, and the biggest possible audience comes from Paradise City versus Estranged.
Well, I think you just proved that in this conversation, Paul. We talked about Rat, and Rat was a way more technically proficient band, songwriting-wise, than Kiss ever was. That's arguable. I know there's people are going to hate me, but they were not marketed like Kiss was the Walmart of rock bands. You say what you want about it, that's what they were. They knew how to market themselves at a level that was unprecedented, even in the 70s.
Yeah, I would argue that Kiss is a better band than you think.
They are. I agree. I'll agree with that.
But the stuff that's good, stuff like Watching You and Mr. Speed and Hooligan and Almost Human, nobody knows that. Nobody cares. Nobody dug deep enough into it. But I've got it all over here from album number 1 all the way through the Off the Soundboard records that they just put out. So I'm in the extreme minority when it comes to that. So I can speak from an educated standpoint on it. People want to hear Beth and Rock and Roll All Night and Detroit Rock City, and that's it. Occasionally, shout
one
it out
of my
loud.
favorite Kiss songs. I love Watching You. I love Parasite, but you never hear those songs.
Those are fantastic songs, but nobody cares.
Right.
And those are better songs than some of the stuff that made it on the radio. Better than Heaven's on Fire. Better than I Was Made for Loving You. Better than Lick It Up. But nobody went back to listen to. There are like 6 riffs in Kiss's Watching You that are as good as anything Aerosmith or Zeppelin ever wrote.
Agree.
Wow.
But nobody cares.
Creatures of the Night is one of my favorite songs to play on guitar.
But nobody cares. It's such a small minority of people. And everybody says, well, if there were a radio station that played those songs, it would not exist. It wouldn't work. It wouldn't work because they only want to hear rock and roll all night. One of the worst things that can happen at a concert, especially like an Aerosmith concert now, is here's a song off the new album. You can watch the audience react.
Yeah. Yep.
You can watch 100%. The audience react. The kids will sit there and cheer, and those that have been there for 30 years will get up and go get a beer or a t-shirt.
100%. Because you go to the concerts, especially bands that have been around forever, 40, 50 years, you go to hear the hits. I want to hear every single song you've ever played that just rocked the airwaves. And then, like you said, here's a new song. Fuck, really? Even Alter Bridge. Like, love Alter Bridge, right? We've talked about Alter Bridge. Love them. But they don't write like they used to. But they're fantastic live. Like, they're mind-boggling live, and just the sheer presence of them. But it's one of those things that, Alter Bridge is one of those bands that never hit in America like I thought they would have, but they're huge overseas, which, they're created.
And they should have, but he's right. For some reason, nobody cares except the people who really appreciate music, like the 3 of us. We love Alter Bridge, but I just don't understand why. I guess the market is so oversaturated with content, entertainment-wise, you have to stand out somehow.
Yeah.
It's an interesting dilemma. We talk about Rat, we talk about Kiss, we talk about Kicks, and there's a very good chance, because you're a music nerd, that you can name every guy in the band.
Sure.
You can name every guy in Iron Maiden. You can name every guy in Judas Priest. You can name every guy in Rat and Motley Crue and stuff. Who plays bass for Nickelback?
I don't know.
I have
Who
no
cares?
fucking idea.
That's my point. My point is there's nothing to grab onto. If Alter Bridge didn't get a hit song with Before Tomorrow Comes, they will never have a hit song.
True.
Because they wrote a song that has a huge hook, that has a great riff, and Miles is one of the greatest singers out there, even if he oversins most of the time.
Yeah.
His stuff is fantastic. So Alter Bridge has all of the elements of a great band, except, as Alice Cooper would say, where's the song?
Yeah.
They haven't found whatever that song is. Seven Dust, same thing. Fantastic band.
Absolutely.
Can't write a song that resonates enough to break through.
Yeah.
Don't know what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas there are other bands that are, that have had dozens of number 1 hit songs that I think are mediocre bands.
Yeah.
Man,
agreed.
that is an
Absolutely.
interesting path to travel. I mean, you could do a whole podcast on that. Why because the song Black by Seven Dust comes to mind right away. When it came out, I thought these guys are going to be huge.
Yeah.
That was my opinion.
And yet Limp Bizkit did it with a cover of George Michael's Faith.
Right?
Right.
Like
Great
the idea
point.
that Limp Bizkit got rich off of music that Mike Muir and Suicidal Tendencies pioneered 20 years before them is garbage to me.
Agreed.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, you've got, there are bands like Suicidal Tendencies and 24/7 Spies and Psychofunkapus and Faith No More that came long before
Faith
nu
No
metal.
More. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Faith No
Came
More
long
was
before nu
badass.
metal that did this, you know, and even the Chili Peppers in their early days were much more rap rocky, much more funky. That style of music did hit because Limp Bizkit and Korn and a couple other bands, all of which are dwarfed by Rage Against the Machine, who are the best of that ilk.
Agreed.
Sure.
All of those bands, you know, sit there in my CD collection gathering dust while Limp Bizkit was headlining stadiums. And they're out again.
Right.
They were out opening for Metallica this time around.
Yeah.
Who would have thought
Which
that
is
Limp
crazy.
Bizkit would still be a thing?
Not me.
Crazy.
Creed.
I
Creed
never-
are
yeah,
headlining amphitheaters while Alter Bridge can't fill a club.
I know, it's crazy. It's crazy. But they can go to overseas and they can pack Wembley. Like I saw the Fortress, the tour they did, which ended up being the Fortress album where they played with the London Philharmonic, whatever it was. They came through the Valley. They came through Marquee Theater. The thing was packed, and it was just mind-boggling. I mean, we were on the stage basically, and it just watched that 90 minutes because it's rare to have a band play over 60 minutes or so, and they 90 minutes and then an encore because I didn't realize the end game was to record that whole thing with the symphony behind them. But it just, mind-boggling that they just haven't broken through, like you said, because of the one hit. But just from a talent, like Nicky never saw him before. Nicky after that show was like, holy shit, Mark Tremonti is a god. Like just how he plays, like
he's a beast.
He's an unbelievable musician. Unbelievable.
He should be. You know, everybody talks about one of the things that is lacking in music right now is there's no guitar hero.
He should be our guitar hero.
There should be.
There's no guitar hero. There's no guy. There's no shredding, guitar player. You know, when we were kids growing up, you had pictures of your favorite guitar players, Eddie Van Halen.
Yep.
You know, those were that was your guy. There is no guy out there. There's no great guitar player.
Along that, I got two questions for you real quick, Mark. But along that line, Mark, I called him Mark. His name's Paul. I'm thinking of two different things at the same time. Anyway, Slash is an icon, right? I don't think we ever looked to Slash as an Eddie Van Halen and I don't think he wanted to be looked at that. He made himself an icon, but I agree with what you just said. There's no guitar hero.
No, but Slash has been around for 40 years.
Yeah.
40.
Right.
Yeah.
40 years.
Yeah, he's
which is
like
insane.
a retired guitar icon.
He's an
still playing.
elder statesman.
Yeah.
Like who plays guitar for Shinedown?
No
I have
idea.
no idea.
Who plays guitar for one of my favorite bands that nobody cares about, Rival Sons?
I love Rival
that's
Sons,
a good
dude.
band. I do too. You introduced me to Rival Sons. That's why I like
How about
Rival
the
Sons.
Do you listen to the Cold Stairs, Paul?
Listen to who?
The Cold,
Cold
Stairs.
No.
Check them out.
All
I
right.
think they're along the same lines as Rival Sons.
Yeah, I listened. I mean, there's a band out of Belfast, Northern Ireland that I love called The Answer. Nobody cares.
I'll check them out.
They've got half a dozen records out. There's a band that's been around for 30 years that I love out of England called Porcupine Tree. Nobody cares.
Okay, here's
a
my
great
other
name.
question before I forget. Foo Fighters.
He forgot. Oh.
You go from one legendary, arguably life-changing band to basically another band who attained the same level of success. They can sell out Wembley.
Foo
How does a
Fighters
guy
are a
like-
better band than Nirvana.
Yo,
Agreed.
amen.
That's what I wanted
Absolutely.
to hear you say. Thank you.
Yeah,
No,
absolutely.
they're a better
That's all
band than
I need.
Nirvana. Nirvana was a moment. Nirvana was a pivotal moment in time. I mean, obviously, Smells Like Teen Spirit that's a world changing moment.
Yeah.
Not many bands have that opportunity to
No.
create. There was music before Smells Like Teen Spirit and music afterwards. And when you think of Nirvana, there's only a half dozen songs.
Yeah,
Agreed. Nirvana had like a 4-album career, and they were on the verge of breaking up when Kurt died because their moment had come and passed. They were almost done. In Utero was considered a failure.
Yep.
They were a flash in the pan band.
Yep.
But their flash was massive.
It was massive. It changed the music industry.
Whereas Foo Fighters have been around since 1994, 95 and have had a 32-year career.
Yep.
So Foo Fighters are a significantly bigger band. They didn't have a bigger moment.
Right.
But they're a bigger, better band than Nirvana was.
Yeah.
Kurt was the right guy at the right time. Kurt was easily marketable because he had the blonde hair and the blue eyes and it looked like he needed a hug.
Yep.
I'm not trying to dump on him.
No, but
that's
it's true
the reality
it's
of
true.
Nirvana.
It's a great visual. For people who weren't there, that is a great visual of what they marketed. That's exactly what you saw.
And
a guy in a sweater with his hair down in his eyes, and he looked kind of sad.
He looked like he needed a hug. But that said, Smells Like Teen Spirit is undeniable. All Apologies is undeniable. Come As You Are is undeniable. Like there are some Nirvana songs that are absolutely classic rock now.
Listen to Polly.
Yeah.
They're classic rock songs. And classic rock has nothing to do with age, although it has to be it has to age to a certain point, but it is the best of the best of the best. And Nirvana have a handful of those. I would say when it's all said and done, Foo Fighters have a handful of those as well. I mean, Times Like These is a better song than anything Nirvana's ever written.
True. That's a good song.
Learn to Fly is a fantastic song. You know, there are songs that Dave Grohl has written that should stand side by side. You hear more Foo Fighters on the radio today than you do Nirvana.
True. That's just true.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's true.
There's something to be said for that. The audience has decided Foo Fighters are bigger than Nirvana. They didn't have a bigger moment, but they're a bigger band.
Right. Well, and all the Nirvana fans now are old. We're all old, man. You know.
I think that, but there's something to be said for that though, because like you mentioned a band like Led Zeppelin. Why does Led Zeppelin still resonate?
I was just going to talk to you about Led Zeppelin. I was going to say let's get the lead out, Paul, because Mike and I talk about Zeppelin all the time. It doesn't matter what song comes on from Zeppelin; it's still relevant here and now.
Okay,
the way they recorded
let me
it,
ask him this real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to get his take on this before you ask your question. And maybe you were going that way. I'm sorry to interrupt you. But
go ahead. No, you're good. Go ahead.
Why does Led Zeppelin always sound fresh?
That's why
because
it doesn't sound like 1970 or 60 or 80 or
because Jimmy Page and Eddie Kramer and Andy Johns and Glenn Johns had ears that are timeless. The production values on those records are. There is something about Led Zeppelin that is intangible. I can't imagine sitting in those studios.
That's a great word.
I can't imagine sitting in those studios and having them finish playing back the recording of, let's say, In My Time of Dying, and just sitting there going,
good song.
I think we got it. Like, I there are certain bands that have that. AC/DC has that. Aerosmith has that.
Yeah.
Led Zeppelin has that. U2 have that. The Stones have it. There's an intangible greatness, but there's something to be said for the production values. Whatever it was that Jimmy Page heard, and Andy Johns and Eddie Kramer and Glenn Johns and all of the people that engineered and worked in with Led Zeppelin, there's something that they heard. I don't know. It's a special sauce. Why was Jerry Rice the greatest football player we've ever seen? Because there's just an intangible it that's there. And I don't know what it is.
No.
But Led Zeppelin have it. And I didn't want to say has had it because
they do. It's because
they still have it. There's still something to be said for hearing the ocean, or something to be said for hearing Over the Hills and Far Away, or something to be said for it doesn't matter what you play from Led Zeppelin. It becomes the barometer. That drum sound is the barometer. It's pure.
Yeah.
It identifies
the best.
The rock. It just if you said to yourself, what is a guitar riff? Heartbreaker is a guitar riff. If you said, what is a lyric? It's what Robert Plant sang in Stairway. Drum sound. What is a drum sound? It's the beginning of When the Levee Breaks. Like when you hear that, when you hear that, it becomes the arbiter, it becomes the barometer upon which everything is measured against. And Led Zeppelin set that barometer for everybody. Trust me, the worst thing to be during that period was the Who and the Rolling Stones. Because no matter how good the Who and the Rolling Stones were, Led Zeppelin would release an album. They're like, Jesus, here we go again.
Yeah.
I don't know what
Have you ever watched the documentary Becoming Led Zeppelin?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's mind-boggling. For those of you out there, if you've never watched that documentary, go watch that documentary, and you will understand a little bit more why Led Zeppelin is who Led Zeppelin is.
And before he gets too far away from this point, that's why I wanted him to say that, because I've heard Jimmy Page say it, and I just saw it again in another interview that he recently did. The first time they ever played together was in a room that was barely bigger than the size of a closet. But he said as soon as they finished the first song, they all looked at each other, and with no words spoken, they knew there was something special there. That's all it took, was one song.
Yeah, you can't create chemistry. It either exists or it doesn't.
And Chris and I know that because we had our best time with the four of us in Nemesis. There was no better time because the four of us were all on the same page, focused in the same direction. And like you said, you can't compete with that.
Yeah, when you have and I've been in bands as well. And the band that I was in that went through multiple lineup changes, there was one period of time where the five of us together, that was the band that was either going to make it or it wasn't.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then when one member changed, that was the end of it. There are very few bands that are able to go through a member change, a lineup change, and become better. You know, the argument to be made, AC/DC, Genesis, Journey, Van Halen, you know, there are bands that were, you know, but like when Aerosmith, when Joe Perry and Brad Whitford left and they were replaced by Rick Dufay and Jimmy Crespo, it wasn't the same. Those guys are good guitar players, but it wasn't the same. The chemistry wasn't the same. As good as Jason Bonham played at the O2 Arena in 2007, they understood, they got away with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they understood you can't, Led Zeppelin reunited 5 or 6 times since John Bonham died, and 4 out of 5 of them sucked.
Were disasters. Correct.
Because it doesn't work.
So you have to be able to, chemistry is something that is organic. You know, if the Beatles hadn't split up and tried to continue with different members, God help you. Now, then there's the other side of that.
Right.
But then there's the other side of that. You got the Rolling Stones where, you know, my favorite era of the Rolling Stones are the Mick Taylor years because it has stank on it. You know, I'm not a Brian Jones guy, and Ron Wood is along for the ride. As much as I like Ron Wood and his work in Faces, he's along for the ride. The Mick Taylor years, you know, those are the ones that stank. That have
because I think Mick Taylor pushed back against Mick Jagger and Keith, right? Ron Wood's never going to push back. I think Mick Taylor was a little bit of, he had to have some kind of pushback or they never would have allowed that. I agree with that statement a lot.
Friction works.
Yeah.
Friction works. Look, you know, Pete Townsend and Roger Daltrey hate each other. They love each other, but they hate each other because they aggravate the hell out of each other when they're making music. But there's nobody else that can sing Pete Townsend's music better than Roger Daltrey, and Pete is intelligent enough to recognize that. Roger is the voice for his music.
David Gilmour and Roger Waters.
Same thing. Look, the guys in Aerosmith, they barely talk to each other when they're not on stage. It's you know, Eddie and Dave, you know, and I imagine that Jimmy Page and Robert Plant irritate the hell out of each other. There's something to be said for friction. Out of friction can be magic.
I heard excuse me. I heard Robert Plant tell Dan Rather, it's a lot like being married. And when you've been stuck with somebody, he had a better word, you know, you're basically woven together. You know, the point we just made, the 4 of them made Led Zeppelin. You can't just pick somebody else to write songs with. So he said, it's a lot like being married. You just want to get away from that person every now and then when you've known them or been together and forced to be in this partnership for 40 years or 50 years or whatever.
The Firm should have worked on paper.
No question.
Firm was a good band.
On paper, you had a phenomenal band. You've got, you know, Chris Slade on drums, Tony Franklin on bass. So there's a solid rhythm section right there. and Jimmy Page, and arguably one of the greatest pure vocalists in the history of music, Paul Rodgers.
Paul Rodgers.
It should work. On paper, it should work, but it didn't. There were a couple of magical songs that came out of that collaboration, but that's it.
Yep.
It should have worked on paper. You know, you can't just slam Audio Slave. You can't just slam the three guys from Rage Against the Machine and Chris Cornell together and hope that it works.
Right.
There were moments.
Yep.
Yeah.
But overall, no. Overall, Velvet Revolver.
Yeah. Right. I was just saying, let's talk super bands because these are all super bands. Velvet Revolver, same thing. Right. And
yeah, you try to put those things together. There were moments. I saw Velvet Revolver's first show at the El Rey Theater in Los Angeles. They did a showcase. It was a 4-song showcase at a radio convention, and it was mind-blowing to see that moment. But then when the records came out, there were half a dozen songs on 2 albums. There are 6 songs that are worth remembering out of the
I can only think of one.
24 songs that they wrote.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Slither and Fall to Pieces.
Yeah. Fall to Pieces. Fall to Pieces is one I was thinking of, because that's the only one that just
Slither and Fall to Pieces are the only ones that anybody cares about.
Yeah. Asia. Remember
Asia?
They
were both on the first record.
Of course you remember Asia.
First couple of Asia records are good. First Asia record is great.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed with that. That was the first real super group, wasn't it? Back in the 80s?
No. I mean, no? There's an argument to be made that Cream was a super group.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point.
You know,
that's why I asked the question, Paul.
there's an argument to Blind Faith. You got Steve Winwood and Eric Clapton in the same band. The supergroup thing, some people called Led Zeppelin a supergroup because Jimmy Page was a member of the Yardbirds.
Right.
But nobody else. I mean, John Paul Jones was a known studio entity.
Right.
But John Bonham and Robert Plant were nobodies.
They were playing in bars at the time.
Nobody knew who they were. Yeah, nobody. No. So, but you get one guy. You can't, on paper. Here's an '80s supergroup for you that people that ate absolute dog, and that was Contraband.
Oh yeah, I remember there.
Stephen Pearcy, right?
Contraband was. Let's see if I can name all the members now. Bobby Blotzer, Tracy Guns
from Poison. Okay.
No, Tracy Guns from LA Guns, Bobby
LA
Blotzer
Guns.
from Rat, Cher Peterson from Vixen, a guy named Richard Black from a band called Shark Island.
Great band.
And was Michael Schenker in Contraband? I don't remember.
He's gonna Google it. He's gonna Google it
because that sounds familiar.
I don't think it was Michael Schenker. Who was
no,
it?
he was in MSG for sure. With
I know that.
Macaulay.
I don't know. I think it might be Michael Schenker. I could be wrong.
Band members. Okay. Yep, you're 100% correct.
Yeah. So there's
Tracy Guns and Michael Schenker together. Outstanding.
Right.
There's a great example of the sum of the parts doesn't equal the parts. Michael Schenker is a guy that should be a household name as a guitar player, but he's not. But he's not.
See, I somehow remember Stephen Pearcy fronting that band, but you're right. It was Richard Black.
Yeah. Stephen Pearson was in Arcade.
That's it. Thank you. I knew he had one too. Arcade. I couldn't name one member past Stephen Pearcy in that band.
Yeah. Arcade was they put out a couple of records.
So hands down, your favorite top 3 bands of all time, Paul. Just regardless of genre, I know.
Impossible.
Well, yes, possible.
It's impossible because it changes.
Oh, okay. Okay, so right now then, what are your top 3 favorite bands you're listening to right now in 2026, March 20th?
I always listen to AC/DC, just because there's so much great stuff from Bond to Brian. I'm a big fan of
Who's your favorite?
Oh, Bond is the.
Thank you.
But Brian is still brilliant. If there were no Bond, I would have no problem saying Brian.
I like them both, but I always put the gun to the head moment. If you got to pick one, it's Bond for me.
They were more mischievous with Bond.
Yes. The lyrics were more clever and the music was more clever.
I think it was more dangerous.
Yes.
There was a good chance that, like, as this will sound horrible when I say it, and I don't mean it to say it this way. There was a better chance that Bon Scott was going to steal your girlfriend than Brian Johnson.
Absolutely. And he liked him big. So if you had a big girl, that was Bond's.
Right.
He loved
Rosie, baby.
He liked him, Tasmanian whore. But I also love the Cult.
Billy Duffy.
Yes.
That guitar tone is outstanding.
Yeah.
Yes, plus I love that I have an alternative Jones where I love some of that, the Cult, Balaam and the Angel, Psychedelic Furs, the Beat. Like I like to get into that music. It's not always about a Les Paul and a 100-watt stack. Sometimes
sure.
I like to listen to the Smiths and the Cure and some of that stuff too. To get a break, my musical tastes are so varied.
Me too. Right. Well, and they have to be because what you do for a living, and the fact you have 6,000 CDs, they're not all rock and roll CDs.
I get a lot of hip hop. I get a lot of classic hip hop and a lot of and Nat King Cole, James Brown, Sly Stone.
Wow.
Like I like, I love music.
MC5.
So that's why when you asked for the
I know.
top three, it's impossible.
Yeah.
Because one day it could be Metallica. It's funny. I will never, when everybody ever asked my favorite bands, I never mentioned Motorhead, yet I have a Motorhead tattoo on my leg.
Right. And you met Lemmy, and Lemmy is God.
That was my first interview when I was a kid was Lemmy.
Yeah. Yeah. How was that as a kid? Because you've talked about it on the radio, but how was it just, yeah.
Intimidating.
How old were you?
18.
Oh, okay. Wow.
18 years old, cool. Sitting on a bus with Motorhead, and having Wurzel, who's no longer with us anymore, guitar player Michael Burston, tell me he's quitting the band. Like Lemmy goes into the back. They were sitting down having donuts, and they were stale donuts, and somebody was dumping Foster's 40s, the oil cans into a bucket, into the gray bucket on the bus. And Lemmy goes in the back to get a cigarette or something like that. And Wurzel turns and looks at me and goes, "I'm leaving the band." I'm like, "What did you just say?" "I'm leaving the band. Can't tell anybody." So Lemmy comes back and sits down. Now I've got a secret. And I don't know why he said he was leaving. And by the way, he stayed for another 6 years.
Okay.
But it was just one of those moments where I'm like, hell am I supposed to do with that information? And so later on that night, they're on stage and skinheads are spitting at Lemmy, gobbing at him, which used to be a sign of appreciation in England, but Lemmy didn't find it a sign of appreciation. He took his bass off and he swung it at the kid's head, missed him, barely.
Wow. Yeah.
And I thought to myself, well, this is the greatest experience of my life. I want to do this for the rest of my life. And so I decided at 18 that I was going to do radio. And in October of this year, I would have celebrated my 40th anniversary if I were still on the air. So hopefully I'll be able to get on the air again soon and be able to celebrate that. I love it.
So what were you doing when you were 18? Because obviously were you on the radio then, or were you not on the radio
college
yet
radio.
To have that opportunity? Okay.
College radio and playing college football.
Okay. Right on.
I was when I got walked around the campus by the offensive lineman that was taking all the new, the freshman recruits around the campus. I saw the call letters for the radio station. There was WDJM, which was the name of the college president, Dean Justin McCarthy or something like that.
Okay.
But the call letters of the campus radio station, I said, well, what happens up there? And the lineman said, that's where all the weird kids hang out. And I was like, okay, that's where I'm going. And I walked up there and I asked the program director, what does it take to get on the radio? And he said, what kind of music do you like? I said, that's not what I asked you.
Nice.
And
good answer, Paul.
And that's been basically what I've been. That's kind of, it doesn't matter what music, whatever it takes to get back on the radio and make a living is what I want to do, because it's all I can do now. Like how my skills don't exactly translate. How do you explain what I've been doing for decades?
You ever thought about writing a book?
Yeah.
You ever thought about writing a book? I think you should write a book about your life.
People don't read books.
Yeah, but they have audiobooks.
I
think if you wrote a book just for your 40 years in radio,
dark and stormy night,
exactly, with all the things you've done and all the people you've met and all the shows you've seen and the different cities you've traveled and the different connections you've made, it'd be fascinating.
Well,
I said, the life resume you have is just phenomenal, and we haven't even touched on it.
The book starts where you just started, Paul. It starts with when I was 18 years old. This is what happened.
starts
and
earlier
then
than that, but yeah, I mean,
well, yeah, but
you have a million stories of people
Mhm.
you've met that nobody had the pleasure of meeting, and
right.
those interactions, and it's a not many people have lived that life. You've just been inside it, and you don't see it from the outside looking in, right?
But from the outside looking, from us looking at it, it would be phenomenal. I think, you know, just think about it, man.
I have written therapeutically over the years.
Yeah.
I haven't written anything in a long time.
Yeah.
But I've got, 100+ pages of anecdotes and things, just the things that I don't even remember properly. Like when
You have a dog
when
that
I
just came in
moved-
the room.
did I?
Your
Or a
door
ghost.
just opened up. It had to be a dog or a ghost, man.
No, it's the German Shepherd. It's the big one.
There you go.
He's
I
trying to
figured.
figure out what's going on.
Male, female.
Hi, stupid. He's male.
What's his
Both
name?
male. But they're good dogs. Yeah, I mean, just I've had some weird experiences.
Mm-hmm. I know you have.
And I've written therapeutically. You know, they always tell you when you're in times of stress, you should write.
Sure.
Because it helps you express it. It helps you get it out. Helps you keep from living inside your own head. So I've done that. Yep. I wouldn't even know what to do to get a book published or anything like that. Like that's it's just so outside of my scope of not interest but understanding.
Well,
I wouldn't know what to do.
I
wouldn't know how to do
I think you start writing it like Mike said. You start when you're 18 years old and walking on the college campus, and that's what opened the door. And then you just start writing it. And then once you start writing it, then you just, I mean, like we're having this person on next week that's a talent agent. So I can certainly pick her brain and say, hey, I got a friend who could do this. Where would he go?
We didn't know how to do this before we started.
No.
We just, I agree with Chris.
Yeah.
Amazon that's a place to start. Audible, because what you said about radio parallels to books. I said the same thing. Nobody reads books anymore, but I listen to them all the time at work and at home. So basically, I'm multitasking now, right? I'm cleaning the house and I'm listening to a book.
Yep. We had a guest on the show. I saw her on Facebook yesterday. She just sent her latest manuscript to her editor, so I can poke at her. Hey, hook me up. I have somebody that that might be wanting to do something, because I really do, Paul. I think it would be fascinating.
I'd listen to it. Read it
again,
whatever.
And I wasn't bullshitting when I said when I first met you that when I left that day at KDKB, I was like, this is a genuine human. He's fucking cool. He's not an asshole. He's not arrogant. He's not narcissistic. He's just a genuine human who loves what he does.
And that's what I felt for the last hour, man. This has been a great conversation.
And that came across when you were on the air. And I think it would come across even more so on pages, because everything you're going to talk about is genuine. You lived it, and you're sharing it with people who've never been able to get past that door. Like Aerosmith comes to KDKB. Nobody can get past that door to see Aerosmith because you shut the door. And now you're sitting there in a studio with them talking. You're talking with Lars. You're talking with just an infinite amount of people. That alone, I mean, not even a chapter per guest, but a chapter per meeting, but 2 or 3 paragraphs. It would be fascinating for people who love music. Your life is fascinating.
Okay.
And the stories you can tell and the journeys you've been on through the entire country, because you're not just stuck in Arizona, not just stuck in California, Boston, all that kind of stuff. It resonates. Don Warnock, let alone, dude, we connected because you were a mutual friend. That's the weirdest thing in the world. I thought Don was a DJ, and then like, I'm not a DJ. I just know Paul from Kansas City.
And I haven't worked in Kansas City in
That's what I'm saying.
Years.
That's what I'm saying. It's the 6 degrees of separation with Paul Marshall.
Yeah, I would. For the record, I am 2 degrees. You guys are now officially 3 degrees from Kevin Bacon, because
there you go.
I worked with a guy named Joe Stapleton, who was in Mystic River with Kevin Bacon.
Okay.
Great movie.
Oh, great movie.
So I'm 2 degrees away.
Okay.
Now awesome. You are officially 3 degrees away from Kevin Bacon.
Woohoo!
I can't not ask you this question, Paul. Since we were talking about Kiss and Led Zeppelin and all these great bands, so many people hate on Lars, right? Mm-hmm. Metallica would have never been Metallica if they put what you would call a quote unquote real drummer in that spot? Yes or no?
Lars is a great drummer.
He is. Thank you. I agree, but so many people hate on him.
Lars, if you listen to, I mean, I don't know what is he Charlie Benante? No. Is he Gene Hoglan? No. But he's the right guy for that band. It's like, people hating on Metallica. It's because it's almost Nickelback Creed-like. It's become fashionable to hate on Metallica.
Sure.
They are the biggest heavy metal band ever.
Yeah,
ever.
Amen.
Bigger than Black Sabbath. Bigger than any other heavy metal band. They are the greatest. They are the GOAT.
Win.
And Metallica wouldn't be Metallica if it weren't for Lars.
Agreed.
He and James built that thing from the ground up. He's the guy. He's the guy that put the ads out in the recycler. He's the guy. Is he Neil Peart? No, he's not Neil Peart. He's not supposed to be.
He never claimed to be either.
No.
But there's nothing wrong with Lars's drumming. There's nothing wrong with it. I never understood the Lars hate. I don't get it.
I think part of it comes from the Napster stuff because you have
he was right.
Oh, I know. Well, no, we know he was right 100%.
He was right.
But 100%. But the way, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mike and I have talked about this, but part of the way that Metallica became Metallica was nobody was playing their music on the radio. So all their shows were bootlegged and people were making cassette tapes, giving them to their friends, and in essence, Napstering their music to 100%. Get to a level to where people then started had to pay attention. They started selling out bigger clubs, things like that. All of a sudden, then the radio stations had to play something. So they built some of what their legacy is based on bootleg recordings and shit like that, passing to friends and friends.
What they should do, what they should have done, and all of these bands should have done, is look within.
Yeah.
None of those recordings, none of them would have made it to Napster if Metallica had their business taken care of. Because they go into the studio, they record their songs, it's the four of them and Bob Rock or whoever the engineer was at the time recording them. Somebody hits stop. How many copies of that song exist? Where did they come from? They came from within. Those records those songs didn't leak out because somebody broke into the studio and stole the tapes.
Right.
Somebody in the organization heard the song, played it for somebody, made them a copy of it.
Right.
And somebody uploaded it.
Yeah.
So it's internal. Whoever was was internally, look inside. None of those records, like if you have your business done, this is why Led Zeppelin had a lot of bootlegs too. But this is why Led Zeppelin were so insulated. This is why Iron Maiden today are so insulated. If you can't get, and Metallica have now done this, if you're not in the circle, if you're not part of their organization, you don't get access to the band. You don't get access to any of their stuff. They learned that through the Napster mistake. Somebody in their organization, at their record company, their management, whomever it was, leaked those songs out. They didn't just escape from the studio. Somebody internally blew it.
And it was specifically that I Disappear song initially, right?
That was the one that seems to be the tipping point, and that was for the Mission Impossible soundtrack.
Correct.
So they delivered it to somebody who played it for somebody who made a copy of it, and they uploaded it. So those songs don't just, if you control the flow of the music, you control who gets to consume it. Somebody in their organization betrayed trust. Or somebody played it and somebody, look, I can tell you, I've worked at radio stations where they would come in and they would give us the CD single, and we would play the CD single while behind the stereo were RCA outs into a recording device, so that when they played this, that's why people started showing up with Discmen and not giving us the records, because the radio companies would steal the music, or the record company would steal the music to try to be the first one to play the song. And then we would get a cease and desist letter from the record company. But once it's in the wild, somebody betrayed trust.
Gotcha.
Nobody stole that music from Metallica. Somebody in Metallica's organization made the fatal mistake of playing it for somebody to make a copy of it.
Gotcha.
And then that person uploaded it.
Yeah. And then there you go.
Lars was right.
Off.
And by the way,
absolutely.
We
and
agree.
by the way, the record industry is at fault because it was Philips, Magnavox, and Sony and these record companies and electronics companies that developed digital lossless audio so that you can make an absolutely perfect copy of something digitally and not lose any audio quality. So the industry is responsible for the downfall of its industry. It ate itself.
That's a great point.
That's amazing.
Philips, Magnavox, and Sony and the companies that are responsible for the creation of digital audio and the CD and being able to duplicate audio perfectly without any loss of quality, of audio quality.
Right.
The kids didn't come up with that.
No,
that came from the industry.
Yep,
so
there you go.
You look in the mirror. Sometimes perfection leads to your downfall. And it's interesting to hear that kids are buying CDs again and buying vinyl again. Vinyl that we used to pay $4.98 for at Zia Records is now $30, $40.
I know, it's insane, man. It's insane.
That is crazy.
$40 for an album.
We're creeping up on 12 o'clock, and this is when you used to get the let out. So give us 3 Led Zeppelin songs you would play right now if you were sitting in front of the control panels at the radio station.
Well, you have to play something that is well known first. So you play Over the Hills and Far Away, which encompasses everything that Led Zeppelin is in one song.
Agreed.
Then you play a second song that people know, something like When the Levee Breaks, because
and that was originally a blues song they covered. I don't know if a lot of people know that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Good point.
And then
thank you, Mike.
I forget who did the original one. It'll come to me.
I don't remember who did the original one either, but
Memphis. It might be Memphis Mini.
I think
I don't remember. And then the third one has to be an Oh Wow song. So you play For Your Life from Present.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
Because that's your Oh Wow. You got to reward people for listening to 2 Led Zeppelin songs that they already know and that they've probably heard enough times in their lifetime. So the key of get the let out or any feature work is if you're going to do a 2 for Tuesday or a double shot or something like that, first song has to be a huge hit and the second song has to be an Oh Wow song.
Okay, who's your double shot of Metallica?
I mean, you start with Master of Puppets.
Yeah.
Because it's 8 minutes long and you get away with a song that normally wouldn't get on the radio.
Right.
And then you follow it up with Low Man's Lyric.
Awesome.
Nice.
Awesome.
Something
Great
that you would not expect to hear from Metallica. Low Man's Lyric, or I mean, you could go back and grab, a Creeping Death or or Bread Fan or something that, is somewhat well known. But I'm a big fan of, obviously Enter Sandman, Sad But True, all those big songs, those are the ones that you get their attention with, and then you keep them with something that they may or may not be aware of.
That's awesome, man.
That is awesome. Hey, this is the Christian Mike Show. He's Paul Neanderpaul Marshall. You can find him at neanderpaul.com. Absolute rock and roll life resume legend.
Thank you, guys.
I hope you enjoyed.
Thank you
I hope
so
you
much,
enjoyed
man.
the time. We appreciate your time, Paul. More, we know time is the most valuable commodity. So this has been something I've talked to Mike about forever about getting you on the show. So I'm super happy you were able to put us in your schedule because you're Paul Marshall, man.
That's nice of you. Thank you.
Well, we're nice guys, man, and you're a super cool human. So, nothing but love, brother.
Thanks.
Speaking of which, if you're feeling sad, depressed, suicidal, don't do it. Go scream in a pillow, go journal, go find someone to talk to, go work out, go run, go do something to change your mindset. If for some reason you cannot do that, text 988. Someone is standing there ready to talk you off that cliff. You're a better person because you wake up in the world tomorrow. Don't leave a hole in somebody else's heart because you choose not to do so. You are loved. You are cared about, whether you know it or not. So 988, if you need some help, text that number right now. I'm Chris. He's Mike. And again, this is Paul Marshall. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks again,
Truly
brother.
Appreciate you,
Pleasure
man.
to meet you.
You're going to land on your feet because you're too cool of a human not to land on your feet. So
very kind.
We will call all the people we know and have them hire you.
Hey, I would come back to Phoenix in a heartbeat if there were a job.
Yeah, no, we'd love you back in Phoenix, man.
I regret
you're missed.
Phoenix. Big mistake.
You're missed. You're missed. When KDKB changed format, it went. Just saying. There's the ghost. Whatever that's about. Nothing but love, man. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks. Peace.
Best of luck, man. Peace.
Don't leave yet, Paul. We got to make sure you're uploaded.
Quite clear. We're gonna fly into the